Hello everyone. In this video I want to take a moment to cover one very specific maneuver in the Airman Certification Standards on your private pilot and commercial check ride. Either one, it's the same maneuver. It's emergency approach and landing, simulated. Hopefully it's always simulated. I wanted to kind of show what I have seen the most typical mistake that pilots will make in trying to perform this maneuver, and hopefully how to avoid that. So here we have in the Airman Certification Standards, the emergency approach and landing. There is another maneuver called emergency descent in the Airman Certification Standards that deals more with needing a rapid descent, depressurization, cabin fire, things like that. We're not going to cover that maneuver today. The emergency approach and landing is a representation of catastrophic engine failure, and now we're a glider. So now what? So we're going to look at the 6 skills that we have down there on the bottom, and we're really going to consolidate those into 3 easy steps, A, B, C. So while we can have an engine failure at any altitude, obviously, for the purpose of the check ride, usually your examiner will have you 2,500 feet up, 3,000, 4,000, something to allow some time to be able to run through these steps, find a field, glide to it, and so on. If in the real world you do have an engine failure at a much lower altitude, you're still going to need to do these steps. You just obviously be doing them much faster. So A is for airspeed. Should have been a doctor, bad handwriting. As soon as that engine goes, splat, you're going to have a few seconds of what the heck happened, right? The airplane hopefully was all trimmed up. Let's say you're in a Cessna 172 doing 120 miles an hour. The nose is going to drop and you are going to start losing altitude. It's trimmed for 120 miles an hour. Once you get over your few seconds of what the heck happened, you're going to need to raise that nose, trim, and hold your altitude and let that airspeed fall down to your best glide speed. That's the airspeed we're shooting for. It's the airspeed that's going to get you the most distance traveled across the earth for the altitude that you're losing. Any faster, you may not make your field. Any slower, you might not be able to glide to your field. This is an airspeed you need to have committed to memory, because you just got to shoot for it very first step. If you can't think of it, VY in most training airplanes, your best rate of climb, is usually very close to best glide. You can at least shoot for that until you have time to pull out your checklists. B, best place to land. Hopefully that's readable. While you are scrubbing off airspeed, you are looking for, where am I going to put this airplane? Cornfield, bean field, road, hopefully maybe an airport if it's right within gliding range. We're not going to cover the various options of why certain fields are better than others. You can talk with your CFI about that. Then lastly, we've got checklists. You'll notice on almost every maneuver in the Airman Certification Standards completes appropriate checklists. The FAA loves that. So all 6 skills, really just as simple as A, B, C. So now let's take a look at actually performing this maneuver and the typical mistake that most pilots will make doing that. All right, so let's say we are just flying along here. There's our airplane. We're flying along at 3,000 feet and splat, there goes the engine. So A, airspeed. We're going to hold that altitude because I need it to be able to glide to my field, and we start trimming. About 1 millisecond later, we're going to start looking for, where can I put this airplane? Best place to look, straight down. Hopefully there's a field right underneath you. If not, cast your net out a little bit bigger, and depending upon the winds aloft, headwind, tailwind, pick your suitable field and landing site. So let's say we've got a nice little field right here, and we want to land this way. We'll assume the wind is blowing this direction. Here's what I see most pilots try and do. they've lost their engine and now they're gliding, and they try and eyeball it and come out here somewhere. They're descending, they're descending, they're descending, trying to work it all out so that they end up at 0 feet AGL right here. Sometimes that works. More often than not, you misjudge it and you get right here on short final, either very low, so you don't make the field, splat, or you're way too high and you've run out of options for even a forward slip, flaps, a 360, and you end up long and run off the end of the field. Okay? So the goal of this maneuver really isn't to get here on short final. The goal is to get right here, abeam the numbers, assuming there's numbers there, about 1,000 feet AGL, and then it's just a nice gliding 180-degree turn to your field. Before practicing this maneuver or introducing this maneuver, hopefully your CFI has had you in the traffic pattern. Somewhere here, abeam the numbers, pulls the power and says simulated engine failure, to kind of see for the airplane you're flying, how well does it glide, how much altitude do you lose, and it varies day to day based on the wind. What does it take to make that descending 180-degree power off landing? That's actually a commercial maneuver you have to do on your commercial check ride as well. Okay? So practice some of those first. So then, when you're actually out working on your emergency approach and landing, you lose your engine. A, best glide, airspeed, hold that altitude. B, best place to land. Turn that airplane and just immediately go right for the field. Don't mess with coming out here. Come right here, and then depending on how much altitude you have left, just do descending turns about a point. Imagine a little point right here. And just do circles right next to the field that you want, and try and time it so that you get here roughly 1,000 feet AGL. And work it out in the airplane that you're flying to see how much altitude do you lose in that 360-degree descending turn about a point. You'll vary your bank angle so that you don't end up really wide or end up right over the top of the runway. If you're flying different types of airplanes, do them in all the airplanes you fly. Get to know your airplane. So if you can get your airplane right here, roughly 1,000 feet AGL, you really don't have any excuse to not make your field. If it ends up that you are going to be high or low, it's always best to be a little bit high. You do have lots of options to make the airplane come down. Slips, flaps, things like that. You have 0 ways to make the airplane go back up if you have indeed truly lost your engine. And honestly, I would rather run off the end of the field into a ditch doing 20 or 30 miles an hour than come up short and hit a fence or a tree trying to milk it in and stall it doing 50 or 60 miles an hour. That's much more survivable than this. All right? So there you go. Emergency approach and landing simulated. It's really just descending turns about a point once you get right over your field. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, please let me know. I appreciate them. Thanks for watching.